That third period was the best 20 minutes of hockey that the New York Rangers have played in a very, very long time.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1405 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a gutsy blue-collar gut check of a win by the Rangers in Montreal against the Canadiens, down by 2 goals before you could blink. This game had the look and feel of one that could go off the rails very, very quickly. And one of the things that we've been talking about, pretty much all of us Ranger fans have been discussing during this recent losing streak is, the worry, the fear that at some point, maybe the Rangers are going to get discouraged. Maybe they're going to get down on themselves a little bit because they're playing overall good hockey. They just haven't been finishing their scoring chances. And as a result, they've been losing games. And it kind of felt like tonight could be that night, when they got off to the rough start that they got off to. Fortunately, the Rangers stuck with it. They continued to play their game. They didn't take unnecessary risks. They were committed to playing strong team defensive hockey. And most importantly, they didn't quit. They didn't get down on themselves, much like they would have done if this was last season. We've kind of calmed down on the comparisons between this season and last season, but it's nice to do it in a positive way here. This is a new year, and the Raiders are moving forward, and they don't win this game last year. It's basically as simple as that. This was the first time all season where I really, watching this Ranger game and watching this Ranger team, felt like they were occasionally overwhelmed by the speed of their opponent. We saw that certainly early in this game. Basically, that resulted in the first 2 Montreal goals. It resulted in the Rangers taking penalties because they were having a tough time, I thought, keeping up with Montreal, at least early in this game. What I love, though, is the third period that the Rangers had. The best 20 minutes of hockey that they've played in forever. Months and months and months. And what I really like is that the Rangers kind of took Montreal's game and basically threw it right back in their face in the third period. Because, again, the Rangers stayed committed to who they are. They didn't panic down 2-0. They continued to play strong, solid defensive team hockey without taking any unnecessary risks. But they also knew when to step on the gas, when it was crunch time, and when, okay, we got to come out here like our heads are on fire. And that's what the Rangers did in the third period. From the moment that the puck dropped in the third period, the Rangers were all over Montreal. They had a power play that carried over from the second to the third. And I don't know who stood up and said something in the locker room during the second intermission. Was it the coaches? Was it JT Miller, who's now the captain? Was it somebody else? I'm really not sure, but it feels like a message was received. And that's not to say that the Rangers were playing terrible hockey before that. They weren't, but it felt like they went to a whole nother level in that third period. They were on a mission to make sure they properly used the power play that carried over from the second to the third. And of course, they ended up getting the equalizer there. And it's just great to be able to see this Ranger team kind of find that happy medium where they are being committed defensively, but they also know when it's time to get going and when it's time to step on the gas and when it's time to force the issue a little bit. And you look at the third period again, this team meant business from the minute that the puck dropped for those final 20 minutes. It was the best 20 minutes that the Rangers have played in a very long time. They were opportunistic. They were strong on the puck. The superstar players stepped up in a major way for this Ranger team in the third period. And they stepped up in a way that they did not in the previous game against Toronto. Again, I don't think the Rangers were like dreadful in that game in Toronto against the Maple Leafs or anything like that. But the way that game ended was really a kick in the you-know-what, because you're in overtime and you've got, superstar players like Fox and Panarin and Mika on the ice. And I don't think those guys really came up big in that spot, but they came up big in this game, certainly in this third period. Again, this team meant business from the second that puck dropped in the third period. They were going out there on a mission, and they were not walking out of Montreal without 2 points. To kind of go through the goals really quick here, you start with the the game tying goal, the power play goal at the start of the third period. This is the one that we've been alluding to a little bit. The Rangers were swarming all over the place. This is the one where you had JT Miller passing across the seam to Mika Zibanejad. Mika wasn't able to convert. But what I loved here, the Rangers stayed at it. They were relentless. And then you eventually have a shot by Adam Fox from the blue line that goes in. And nobody really knew who scored. As it turned out, it looked like it deflected off of JT Miller and into the net. But Miller was there. Lafreniere was there, creating chaos, creating havoc in front of the opposition's net. Again, they basically overwhelmed Montreal at the start of this third period, specifically on this power play here, their second power play goal of the night. And then you've got Matthew Robertson. We're going to talk more about Robertson a little bit later in tonight's episode here, the special live episode, and talk about what he's bringing to the table and what a feel-good story that he's been thus far. But he gets the first point of his NHL career, or the first goal. I'm pretty sure it was the first point as well, and basically just hammers a shot from the blue line and scores. We'll break down Robertson's night in greater detail in short order here, including this goal as well. But the Rangers weren't done. They continued to turn it on. Mika Zibanejad attacks the center of the ice on the rush. When is the last time we've been able to say that? And look, Mika did come up short in the overtime period in the last game, but I've been saying on here, I do believe that Mika has deserved better in terms of like being rewarded for strong play. He had another solid game here. He's all over the ice. He's shooting the puck. He's opportunistic. He's skating hard. And here, again, when is the last time we saw this? When is the last time we saw Mika just go north-south, straight up the center of the rink, straight over the blue line? And it really mattered here too, because all of a sudden Montreal, they got Mika, zipping into their zone against them. And it's like, oh, I guess we got to take him seriously, right? So the defensemen, you could see them. They both kind of converged on Mika because he's going to go right up the center of the ice, right to their goalie. And that's when Mika dished to his right to Panarin, and Panarin with an absolute snipe. So Mika Zibanejad, this is kind of old school OG Mika, and we need more of that for sure. I know Ranger fans can run very hot and cold with Mika Zibanejad. I include myself in that as well. But this is the kind of stuff that we need from Mika Zibanejad going forward. And as for Panarin, for me, that was basically his what your season has started. It was the your season has started moment for Artemi Panarin, because that was a big time shot. And he missed a goal earlier in this game in the second period. Would have tied the game, relatively late in the second period, where you just can't even fathom how the puck didn't go in. He had a nice little give and go with Lafreniere, and Lafreniere put it right on a tee for him on the right side of the net. The net is wide open, yawning net. Maybe the net was too wide open, and Panarin somehow put it wide there. But props to Panarin for not getting too down about it and for coming back and scoring a big-time goal here. Obviously, the goal that ended up being the game winner, because, eventually Montreal got one back. We couldn't just cruise to a win here, could we? It had to be iffy, had to be a little bit sketchy down the stretch. We all had to hold our breath a little bit, but obviously the Rangers did get the job done. And like I said, this Panarin snipe here holds up as the game winner. But again, I loved everything about this third period. I love the way that the Rangers kept Montreal to the outside. Once they were playing with the lead, the Rangers, that is. I love the way this team was fighting for pucks like their lives depended on it. I love the way that, and this is a credit to the coaching staff as well, this team was rolling four lines for basically the entire third period. I mean, certain lines and certain players, they're going to get more ice time than others. And certainly when you've got a 1-goal lead and it's getting late, you've got specific players that you want on the ice for those situations. But for the most part, everybody was playing, everybody was contributing, everybody was producing. And one thing that I said about a Ranger win earlier this year, and I'll say it about this game too, point out any Ranger to me that did not play well in this game. Point out anybody that had a rough night, that was a liability. I don't think that player exists. I mean, certain players are going to stand out more than others. I think we know that, but nobody had a rough night. I think everybody, if you're going to give out like the Broadway hat, I mean, they're still doing that. I haven't really noticed that on social media this year. This is like, as corny as it sounds, this is like everybody gets the Broadway hat tonight, because I feel like everybody, was pulling in the right direction. And give props to Jonathan Quick as well. This is why Jonathan Quick still needs to be on the New York Rangers. He gives up 2 goals early, and it's like, oh man, this could be a long night, right? And he buckles down and he figures it out. I'm not putting all those goals directly on Quick. They would have been tough to stop, but he figures it out, has a strong night, some really solid saves. None that were like maybe like a 10 out of 10, but 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 kind of saves. If we're doing like, a 10 scale rating or whatever it is. But Quick was great. The Rangers wanted this game bad. They wanted this game bad. And the bottom line, we'll do one more comparison to last season. The Rangers do not win this game last season. If this was last season and this game started the same way that this one did, the Rangers are coming up with an L, and probably a lopsided one at that. And I got to give a shout out to Christopher Franzek on Twitter. This is what Christopher tweeted out in response to something that I tweeted after the game. And I think this is so spot on, just nail on the head. This is what Christopher had to say. Last year's team would have quit down 2-0 after 4 minutes and been down 5-1 entering the third period. That is so specific and yet so accurate. That is literally exactly what would have happened last season, but not this year's Rangers. They stuck in the fight. They hung in there. They weathered the storm. They fought their way back into it. And despite being on a 3-game losing streak, and maybe this is a time in a game or a time in your season where you have a tendency to press a little bit and get out of your game plan, the Rangers didn't do that. They stayed true to the kind of hockey team that they want to be, and they found a way to get 2 points. This Ranger team has played well, and you wouldn't know it from some of the final scores of some of these games because they're having such an issue scoring goals. But that's the only area of their game that I think has been a liability this season, the fact that they can't finish their chances. And as a lot of you have pointed out, and the Rangers themselves have mentioned, the goals will eventually come. We just have to keep playing our brand of hockey. They've clearly bought into Mike Sullivan's system. I think they've probably bought into JT Miller and whatever he's selling, and buying into him just as the captain overall. It's good stuff. This is a great win. Got to keep it rolling in the next one, but this is a very hard-earned, very blue-collar win for this Ranger team tonight. And if you're a fan of this team, I think you should be feeling pretty good right now. Enjoy this one because it's been tough. It's been tough watching them come up empty the last handful of games before this one. So in just a second, I'm going to keep everything rolling. Want to shift our attention to Matthew Robertson, talk a little bit about his goal, talk a little bit about his start to the season, and why, for me, I think he's one of the feel-good stories of this Ranger team thus far this year. But we're going to do all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Let's be honest, most of us cannot even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it is easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why you got to go with Monarch. It is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. It's the best because it can help you organize your accounts, it can help you track your spending, and get a better handle on your investments without ever needing to touch a spreadsheet. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where your money is going and how to make it work harder for you. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL, monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on this special post-game live edition of Locked On New York Rangers. Got to give a big shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for sticking with this podcast, sticking with this team. They can try our patience every now and then, but at the end of the day, we're all in this together. And on Monday, Rangers going to be back in action at home against the Minnesota Wild. We might do another episode between now and then, and if we do, I think we might take a look at some of the Ranger prospects. That's always kind of a hot button topic, and when should they be called up and whatnot. I think some people are looking for maybe that to happen sooner rather than later. But we had a big night for Gabe Perreault with the Hartford Wolfpack. We had EJ Emery. Now, he's a ways away from getting to the NHL, obviously, but Emery ended up with 2 goals playing for North Dakota. Obviously, a recent first-round pick by the New York Rangers is Emery. So we'll talk about those 2 and others as well. But for right now, let's keep the focus on this game, and more specifically, somebody who has stepped up in a major way and been kind of an unlikely hero. I mean, maybe that's a little too strong of a term, but an unlikely, very, very productive, very solid player for the Rangers thus far, and that is going to be Matthew Robertson. When Carson Soucy went out with the injury, it obviously opened up the door for somebody else to step into the lineup. And I feel bad for Soucy. I think the last full game that he played with the Rangers, now granted it was against the Buffalo Sabres, but I still think it was the best game he had played as a member of the Rangers. And when Soucy comes back, I think he'll step back into the lineup. But I don't think that it should be in place of Matthew Robertson. I think it should be in place of Urho Vakanainen. We'll elaborate on that concept in a little bit here. But when Soucy went down with the injury, Matthew Robertson, who made the team, but did so as the number 7 defenseman, which I always thought was a little bit of an odd choice. he went basically from number 7 to number 4 on the depth chart for the Rangers because they thrust him right into a top 4 role right away. And I realize, there's times that Braden Schneider will occasionally, he'll move from third pair right D to second pair left D, and he'll step into that spot in place of Robertson. But for all intents and purposes, that's been Robertson's spot in the lineup on that, second pair in there alongside Will Borgen. And you see that, and it's just like, man, like, how did that happen? Like, are we really doing this? Like, Matthew Robertson, the guy that we took in the second round 6 years ago, that's never been able to, get to the NHL or certainly stick in the NHL, debuted at the end of last season. But yeah, I mean, that's what they did. And what's crazy about all this to me is I didn't really see anything in the preseason that made me believe that anything was going to be any different for Matthew Robertson this upcoming season. I mean, did anybody else? Did I miss something? It's not to say he was dreadful or anything like that, but it was getting to the point where it just felt like Robertson was never really going to crack this lineup and become a regular. And now he has a chance to do exactly that. As a matter of fact, I'm betting on that happening because I think even when Susie comes back, like I'm talking about just a second ago, I think he'll be stepping in place of Urho Vakanainen rather than Matthew Robertson. And, the everydayers, the people that have been with this podcast for, God knows how long at this point. We are in year 7 now. But some of know that I've always kind of like marveled at the decided lack of buzz surrounding Matthew Robertson. Whether it's reporters or whether it's us as fans, you just never really hear, or at least not until recently, you never really heard anything positive about Matthew Robertson. You never heard anything negative about Matthew Robertson. For somebody that the Rangers took in the second round, so many years ago, and for a team that often, deservedly so, I might add, comes under fire for its inability to develop prospects, you would think this would be like a bigger topic of conversation, a bigger point of discussion than it's been for this Ranger team among the fans, among the reporters, whoever it might be for the last couple of seasons here. But it hasn't been. And now all of a sudden, he kind of just sneaks his way onto the roster. And the next thing you know, again, he's in a top 4 role for this team. It really is a cool story. Now, he did have a miscue early in this game, although Sullivan did defend him for this mistake after the game, and I'll explain that in a second as well. But basically, game is still scoreless, so it's like the first minute and a half of the game, and the puck is in the Montreal zone, and you've got Robertson on the left side. He pinches a little bit. He wants to try to keep the puck in the offensive zone, and he is able to knock it down. The puck was coming in hot, and he was able to knock it down. Unfortunately, it went right to, I believe it was Caulfield, and Caulfield breaks out with it. Just like that, it's a 2-on-1. And let me just take a quick pause here to mention that seeing an odd man rush against the Rangers, I mean, that was like saying the sky is blue last season, right? I mean, it's evergreen, right? It's an evergreen statement to make. This year, when the Rangers are giving up an odd man rush, it's happening so infrequently, which is good, obviously, that it really does stand out more so than it certainly did last year, and that's nice to see as well. But as for this play, obviously, Caulfield, he's off to the races, and Borgen's the only guy back. He's able to make a perfect pass to Slavkovsky. Slavkovsky scores. It's 1-0. Sullivan did mention after the game that he felt that was a difficult play, and he's not wrong about that. That was like a tough keep in for Robertson, and he did keep it in. It unfortunately just went right to Montreal, and he felt there should have been better support on the back check there for Robertson. There wasn't, but, onward and upward, and hopefully that's something that the Rangers can work on moving forward. But, yeah, Robertson ends up scoring the goal. For a while, it looked like it might be the game winner. It put them up 3-2, and obviously Montreal got one back. But, I mean, just a great shot from the blue line. The puck kind of knuckled a little bit, and maybe that's one that Montembeault would have liked to have stopped. But be that as it may, obviously a big moment there for Matthew Robertson. And at the end of this night, he ends up with a goal. He was a -1. He had 2 shots on goal and also a blocked shot. More notably, though, to me, than any of these numbers, is the time on the ice. Robertson ended up playing 16 minutes, 32 seconds in this game. And that's not obviously an enormous amount, especially as it pertains to defensemen. However, he only got 30 seconds less than Braden Schneider got. And on top of that, he got more than 5 minutes more than Urho Vakanainen got. Every single sign that we're seeing, whether it's this time on the ice discrepancy, whether it's how highly that Sullivan continues to speak about Matthew Robertson after games, or even just the play itself of both Robertson and Vakanainen, every single sign points to Robertson sticking in this lineup once Susie returns. And I'm not picking on Vakanainen. I don't think he was like terrible in this game or anything like that. He did take a penalty that led to a Montreal goal and made it 2-0. But, at a certain point, I think you just have to look at what the lay of the land is here. And it's very difficult to come to any other conclusion other than Robertson can, should, and will remain in this lineup once Susie returns. So we'll see if the Rangers end up doing that. You never know with this team. You guys know as well as I do. You never know for sure. But so far this season, I do feel like Sullivan is showing just a little bit more common sense than some of our more recent Ranger coaches. And he's actually reacting to things that he sees. I used the fourth line as an example of that a couple of games back when they got a whole bunch of ice time that they don't typically get. So that's nice to see. And again, if Sullivan's seeing what we are, and based on his comments he is, I would fully expect Robertson to remain in the lineup moving forward. But, we also, while we're talking about Robertson, we got to give some props as well to this entire group of defensemen, even Vakanainen. You know what? They're all holding up all right. They're all doing well. This was a completely thrown together makeshift bunch of defensemen. None of these guys, other than Fox and Schneider, were on the Rangers NHL roster at all last season. I mean, yeah, Robertson got the last 2 games, but for all intents and purposes, it was just Fox and Schneider. You've got all these new guys. You've got all these wheelings and dealings last year. You trade for Vakanainen. You trade for Borgen. You extend both of them. You then sign Gavrikov in the offseason as well. And now Robertson is up from the AHL and he's playing with the team. So, these guys, not a whole lot of them are all that used to playing with each other. I mean, some of them probably didn't even know each other up until a couple of weeks ago, and they've held it together. And we thought that this might be a weakness of this Ranger team. Thus far, it's been a strength. Coming into tonight, and I don't know, there's games going on right now, so who knows what it's going to look like at the end of tonight. But coming into this game, the Rangers had yielded the least amount of high danger scoring chances per 60 minutes against. That's awesome. That's team defense right there. And you can't put up a stat like that. You can't put up a number like that. You can't put up you can't be that head and shoulders above the rest of the league without your defensemen playing very, very well. And I think they have, for the most part. There's hiccups here and there, but been a solid start to the season for this bunch. And props to Robertson and company for that. So in just a second, we're going to go to somebody that I feel like has been kind of an unsung hero thus far this season for the New York Rangers. Somebody that brings it every night. Somebody that, dare I say, is an early front runner for the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award. I know it's a little bit early to be talking about that, but be that as it may, that's going to be Sam Carrick, and we'll discuss his night and his importance to this Ranger team, and we will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is the best because it's got something for you no matter how you like to bet. Whether you're into player props, you're really a fan of those same-game parlays, or you want to bet for your team, you want to bet against your team, you've got a certain hunch about this player or that game that you feel you need to play, FanDuel has got you covered. It makes football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode by talking a little bit about Sam Carrick. And I see there's some comments in the YouTube comment section. We are live here tonight, so we'll get to a couple of those as well. Sam Carrick, straight up beast. Again, I made this point a second ago. Early frontrunners for the extra effort, Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award. I mean, I think Carrick's leading the way. You could make a case. I mean, JT Miller, he's almost too obvious because he's the captain now, and we know he's going to play rough and tumble hockey. Dare I say Mika Zibanejad? I mean, is that crazy to say? I mean, there's been effort this season for Mika Zibanejad. You could make a case for either goalie. I think it would be Igor over Quick. But that's good. We've got a decent amount of that's just off the top of my head. You want a real dark horse? We just got done talking about Matthew Robertson. We could throw him in there as well. But just the fact that we have actual candidates for this award, and I know it's early, but just the fact that there are candidates for this award this year when there weren't last year, that's a positive thing as well. But as for Carrick in this game, let's start with the fight, because why not? So basically, The Rangers have been swarming at this point in the game. They're down 2-1, but they're really pressing in the second period, looking for that equalizing goal. And you have a feeling it's on the way. The Rangers had like 3 or 4 straight shifts in a row here where every line was on the ice. But the commonality, I guess, of all 3 or 4 of these shifts is that the puck was in the Montreal zone and the Rangers were swarming and they were creating scoring chances. And Carrick's line gets on the ice. He delivers an absolutely massive hit behind the Montreal net, And then we've got Jack-Eye basically coming up and challenging Carrick to a fight. And, Rempe and Jack-Eye, they have history. They got into a fight last season. They were talking a little bit before this game. They were certainly talking during the game as well. A couple of post-whistle scrums between the two of them. So you're thinking maybe like that's going to happen again, but Jack-Eye decides he wants to be a tough guy, go after Sam Carrick for delivering a clean hit, and fight somebody who's like a weight class down for him. But props to Carrick for answering the bell here, dropping the gloves, getting into it. And you could debate who won this. I think Jack-Eye maybe landed a couple more punches, but I feel like some of the punches that Carrick landed were a little bit more impactful, including the one near the end of the fight where they were both kind of falling down. But either way, this gives the team some jump. It gives the team some juice. And again, I feel like the Rangers are playing well up to this point, but this just kind of signified, and I think Carrick probably did this by design, like, dude, we're all in here. Like we are in it. We are in a fight here. We are doing everything we can. We are going to battle for 2 points in this game. And props to JT Miller for recognizing what Carrick just did. He went over, gave him a fist bump right after the fight was over. Carrick was fired up. Good stuff. I know Sullivan was livid because he felt, and I would tend to agree here. I mean, look, we're all a little Ranger biased, but I would tend to agree with his seeming assessment that Jack-Eye should have been given an extra 2 minutes for instigating the fight. Because Carrick, he throws a hit behind the Montreal net, clean hit, and then he's got to fight. And he's got to fight somebody who's bigger than him, but props to Carrick for getting the job done and using this fight as a way to kind of propel the Rangers forward. Because this is a tough win. The Montreal Canadiens are no joke. That team is ahead of schedule. They are a handful, and the Rangers really hung in there in this game. And this fight by Carrick, I think, really kind of just signified that, we're in the weeds and we're going for it here. Carrick had 3 hits in this game, including the one that I just talked about. Made an important play at the end of this game as well. The Rangers are up by 1 goal, and I think we're down to about 2 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that to go. And at this point, they're 4-on-4, which you really don't want as a Ranger fan going against Montreal, because Montreal's got some speed and some skill. They can use that extra real estate out there to their advantage. And on top of that, when you're up by 1 goal, you'd rather play 5-on-5 as opposed to 4-against-4, because 4-against-4, it just lends itself to more offense and more scoring chances. And you don't want that when you're late in the game and trying to protect the lead. But be that as it may, a nice play by Carrick. Again, a little play, one of those things that gets lost in the course of a hockey game, but he forced his guy out of the zone. Montreal was moving the puck around a pretty good, looking at least semi-dangerous in the Rangers zone. And they're up near the blue line, and Carrick challenges his guy, knocks him into the neutral zone, knocks the puck into the neutral zone as well, and basically forces Montreal to have to reset at that point. So that was awesome. And the other thing that I can really appreciate about Carrick is that it feels to me, and you guys let me know how you feel about this as well, it feels to me like he has really, really embraced this role of getting to play between the 2 12-foot tall skyscrapers on each side of him, the young kids, the guys that are coming along. It feels like he's kind of embraced this role as the gritty 4th line center, the elder statesman of that line, the guy that's going to set a good example for the 2 of them. Now, I don't know what their relationship is like behind the scenes and whatnot, but that line does seem to have good chemistry. They seem to have a good work ethic. We've talked about that. We know they'll hit anybody. They'll fight. I mean, we haven't really seen Edstrom fight yet, but, Rempe, he'll fight. Obviously, Carrick, he'll fight when the occasion calls for it as well. And the other funny thing here, I got to mention this, we keep calling these guys the 4th line, right? Are we sure they're not the 3rd line? They seemingly have been more noticeable the last handful of games here than the 3rd line. The 3rd line is Laba, who's still coming along. I think Laba's done fine, but, he's not popping off the screen the way that he did maybe in the preseason, but he still has some promise, and I think he still deserves to be in that role, the 3rd line center. But Laba is there. Radish is there. I haven't really seen a whole lot from him. And then we've got Parson and Brodzinski rotating. But whatever the combination is, I mean, I'm noticing the Carrick line more often, and I feel like typically they're getting as much or more ice time than the Laba line. There was 2 games ago where, again, that 4th line played a whole boatload of minutes. And in this game here, It was a little bit more evenly distributed, but of the 6 forwards in the bottom 6, Juuso Parssinen had the least amount of ice time, whereas Carrick had the most. I mean, it was pretty evenly distributed among those bottom 6 forwards, but I mean, they're basically getting to the point where they're the fourth line in name only, and good on them for taking the bull by the horns and earning more ice time and earning more trust. That's the other thing too. Last season, in the past, I mean, you can go back any number of Ranger coaches. The fourth line typically is not going to be on the ice when you're protecting a 1-goal lead with 5 minutes left, with 3 minutes left, whatever it might be. The game against Toronto, we've got a tie game. And this line with Carrick and Edstrom and Rempe, they're out there with 5 minutes to go. They're out there with 3 minutes to go. They're out there with like 1:30 to go. Like, these guys are getting to play, and that's awesome, and they've earned that. And again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier with Sullivan, but props to him for recognizing that, okay, these guys are playing well and actually reacting to it. It's very nice. It's very refreshing to see that. So good stuff all around. I figure, we'll go to your comments here for a quick, I was going to say Q&A session, but I think it's more going to be just like a statement session here. We've got Boxing Fan who says Panarin finally scored. Smiley face, indeed. Travis Mule. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Travis Mole. He's in the fantasy league with us, and we have a good time there. There's a lot of lighthearted smack talk that goes on. But Travis says it's all coming together for this team. We all knew it was going to take a catalyst type of win, and this was it. LGR. Yeah, you really hope that game-to-game momentum can be kind of fickle, but if there's any game that can carry over to the next one and really make it kind of build on it from one game to the next, I think this is probably it right here. I mean, this is a character win, a gritty win, and obviously a come from behind win, and what's historically a tough barn to play in. Michael Rotolo says, really hope Robertson can play his way into a more regular role. I mean, I think we're seeing it, man. The jury is still out. It is only a handful of games, but for the most part, again, just steady, consistent hockey. He's physical when he needs to be. Not like he's out there taking people's heads off, but he will body guys. He'll prevent them from getting to the front of the net. That's been good to see. Nice to see him score a goal here as well. Seems to be a decent puck-moving defenseman as well. That's something I'm going to watch a little bit more closely moving forward, but that's something that was an issue, or certainly a question mark coming into this season, is the Rangers getting hemmed in their own zone, and none of their defensemen can move the puck. Robertson, it feels like he can do that. Let's see. Yeah, Travis made the same point that I was making here. Which fourth line, Michael? The LOL, the Carrick line is still a driving force. They've been awesome. Jason C says Rangers win. Sometimes you just got to keep it short and sweet in the comment section there, and especially when you've lost 3 in a row in what I would say semi heartbreaking fashion. Yeah, nice to just enjoy the win. Steve Marks, nice to see Robertson getting a goal and a solid defensive effort. Indeed, he's been very solid. Let's see here. Bruce Leroy, love the physical play, love a team that plays tough. They were definitely physical in this game. The third period, they really ratcheted up the intensity. They were bodying everybody. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. This is a team win. Everybody was out there giving everything they had on every shift, and that's the kind of hockey that you love to see, and that's the kind of hockey that, even if you never want to lose, and you don't want moral victories. I get that. But at least go down swinging. At least go down playing the kind of hockey that that you can play, and at least competing. I've talked about this before, but contrary to what a lot of people think, I don't think it's impossible to win over New York sports fans. You have to do 2 things. And some of you know where I'm going with this. I've said this before, but some people might be new here too. You got to do 2 things to win over New York sports fans. You got to play your tail off. That's number 1. And number 2, you got to be accountable when things are going bad. If you do those 2 things, that's a good amount of the battle when it comes to winning over New York sports fans. And that's what we didn't see at all from this Ranger team last year. And it's what we're starting to see this upcoming season, especially the first one. That's been good. The effort has just been a world of difference this year. Okay, so this comment must have been a short time ago. Did you talk about Carrick? He's one of the toughest players on the ice. Love his play and leadership on that fourth line. Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, man. That he was great. And I said on Twitter, and I'm not kidding when I say this, Sam Carrick might be my favorite player on this team. The guy goes to work every single night. He's not a superstar, but he understands that. He knows what his role is. He's going to play physical. He'll get under the skin of his opponents. he's got like a little more offensive ability than I think people realize. I think he's a little bit better of a skater than people realize. And like I said, and like you said here, Steve, as well, he is really, I think, kind of embraced that role of leading the two young guys, Edstrom and Rempe. So that's been obviously great to see. Michael says, agreed, Vakanainen makes me nervous. Yeah, he makes me a little nervous too. I mean, I don't know. As a seventh defenseman, you can't expect like somebody to be a world beater. But the thing is, they're not really using him as a seventh defenseman right now. Like he's in the lineup every night. I think that will change when Susie comes back. And that has more to do with Robertson playing well than Vakanainen being like terrible. But with Vak, I don't know. I just feel like his ceiling is very limited. His upside is very limited. He is what he is at this point. And what he is somebody that is a bottom pair defenseman at best and probably better suited to be in that seventh defenseman role. I've seen worse Ranger defensemen, and so have all of you. But he can make me nervous at times as well. Where's Waldo agrees with me. Carrick might be my new favorite player after JT Miller. Okay, well, second place isn't bad. And, JT's the captain, and he's the guy that's here and, kind of charged with the task of, fixing the Ranger culture. And I think we're seeing some results of that, thus far this season. Michael says, I think Schneider is much better than he gets credit for. I agree. I do not understand really where the Schneider hate comes from, especially when you've got this Ranger team that so badly struggles to develop prospects. So many of them just haven't panned out. And even some of the guys that are still here, they haven't become the players that you would expect. Schneider was a first-round draft pick, and you won. Like, he's a good defenseman. He's not a superstar. And maybe that's where, like, some of the issues come when it comes to, fans that don't like Schneider is, like, you just think first rounder, he's going to be a superstar. Braden Schneider was never really expected to be a superstar. The MO on him going into that draft, this is a floor pick. This guy will be a solid top 4 defenseman on your team, and you don't have to worry about it. Like he's going to at least be that. The ceiling might not be that much higher, but he will be a steady player, and I think he mostly has been. Now, I realize they mostly play him on the third pairing, but that has more to do with the whole righty-lefty stuff than anything else. When it comes to, and Sullivan even talked about that. He said if we're looking at our true blue top 4, Schneider would be a part of that. Let's see who else we got here. I want to get some different names involved as well. We got somebody else here. Silver Lone Dread. When they scored the 2-2, I felt a sense of relief in the players, a roar of relief from them. Yeah, they were fired up, and it's just nice to see more energy from this team this season. More camaraderie, more fire. You can pretty much use any word you want. I talked about this last season. There were games last year. They would score a goal, and they kind of would like almost slump over, and it felt like it was work for these guys to go and congratulate each other after scoring the goal. And they were fired up after this, and I felt really, really good once the Rangers scored to tie it at 2-2. And you're getting to the point where it's like, okay, well, they got a couple goals, past the netminder in this one. They're not going to get goalied again. They're not going to have, all these scoring chances and nothing to show for it the way that it's been going in previous games. It felt like they were off and running. And I will say, for whatever reason, the goal that really fired me up in this one, it wasn't this one. It wasn't even the go-ahead goal by Robertson. It was the Panarin goal, because that was 3 goals in the span of only a couple of minutes. And by that point, it was so obvious that the Rangers had really hit the ground running in the third period, and they were ready to take complete control of this game. Now, obviously, Montreal answered back, and it got a little dicey near the end, and the Rangers held on. But that was the moment for me where it was like, okay, they're finally getting rewarded for the style of play that they're playing. They deserve this. They are taking the bull by the horns in the third period. The third period had been an issue in the preseason. It was certainly an issue last year as well. That was the one where it was like, okay, like we're back. This is what's supposed to be happening based on the effort that the Rangers are giving night in and night out, and based on the amount of scoring chances that they're generating night in and night out. I was fired up after that Panarin goal, and I was fired up when they held on to win this one as well. Boxing fan, Rangers D is much better without Keandre Miller, Trouba, and Lindgren. Thank God they are all gone. Yeah, I mean, should we go one at a time here? I mean, look, I will always be thankful for those players for helping the Rangers go on some deep playoff runs. I mean, let's not act like it's been nothing but misery with these guys, during the last handful of seasons here. But when things went south, oh man, did they ever go south for really all 3 of these players. Trouba, Trouba was slipping even during the Rangers run to the conference final, the one that ended against the Panthers. And then the whole drama in the offseason and the whole, like, I don't think I can be your captain anymore. I mean, he didn't say it literally like that, but that's basically the way that it came off. Miller, I don't know what was going on with Miller last season. His game seemed to decline the last couple of years for the Rangers, and he would just make so many mistakes in big spots in the game. And I'll be completely honest here. When the Rangers were up 4-3 late in this game, I did kind of have that thought. I swear to God, I had this thought, and I didn't even want to have this thought because I don't want to be mean to former Rangers and guys that did have at least some success here. But I did kind of have the thought like, all right, I'm kind of glad Miller's not here right now because this is the exact spot in the game where he would make some kind of, just back-breaking turnover and it would lead to a goal. And Miller did have bad luck in that regard because I feel like anytime Miller made a mistake, it immediately would result in a goal for the opposition. Like, nobody should have that bad of luck, but at the same time, he made too many mistakes last year. And Lindgren, you guys know, he was one of my favorite players while he was here, but the injuries, I think, maybe caught up a little bit, and he basically fell apart last season. And, as much as I like Lindgren, and I really did, he was one of my favorite players, I'll take Gavrikov over him any day of the week. I think Gavrikov has been another guy who's been, very quietly solid for this Ranger team. I feel like he's solidified their defense. We talked about the defensemen earlier and how well they've played and how it's just this thrown together group and they're, yielding all these, very, very small amount of high danger scoring opportunities against. Gavrikov's got a big hand in that, and so do the rest of the defensemen for that matter. So I figure we can call it there. If anybody's got like a last minute comment or question to throw out there, you can do it real quick here. I'll just kind of stall for a minute or two, or not a full minute, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, man, that was a really fun win. That was a really fun win. And you get a win like this, and for me, it just makes me look that much more forward to the next one after this. Rangers are going to be playing at home against the Minnesota Wild on Monday. Again, coming off of a win, you just hope they can keep the good times rolling. It was nice to see them finally get rewarded when they had not been getting rewarded for strong play in the 3 games before this. But we'll call it there. Oh, we got another comment. Let's see. Travis, if the team keeps working Sullivan's system and clogging up the middle of the ice, we will have a great season. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this goes back to the high danger scoring chances, right? The amount of times that teams have gotten a chance from like prime real estate is very, very small. It just really has not happened very often. They have not been giving up odd man rushes either. They are playing good, solid team defense, and it's been a lot of fun to see. Eric Dane says, John, are you going to be a Penguins fan for Halloween this year? What, are you out of your mind? No, no. Yeah, I will say this, though, and people have actually wondered about this because I'm a Ranger fan. My dog's name is Mario, and it's like, well, you're a Ranger fan. Why is he named after Mario Lemieux? He's not. That was just his name when we got him. But, I guess if I wanted to, like, really scare people, I could go as a Penguins fan. But I think I'm good on that. I think I'm good. Yeah, actually, let me know. That'd be a good episode right before Halloween. If anybody's doing any, like, Ranger-themed dress-ups or whatnot, costumes, whatever it might be, send them my way, man. We'll send them on we'll share them on a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers. I think that could be a lot of fun. But yeah, I think for real this time, we actually are going to call it. But thank you guys as always for tuning in. It really does mean a lot. Thanks for joining on this live show, and enjoy the night, enjoy the win. Rangers earned it. And I think we as a fan base earned this one as well. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.